What's up, fam? Welcome back to another episode of Wine and Wealth. Today, I want to share with you a kind of an impromptu podcast that I did at the Miami Business Show that I spoke at last month. I met a lot of people, not so many that I wanted to have on an interview until I met this gentleman that you're going to see now named Jorge Soto. He describes himself as a serial entrepreneur. He's about my age. And as we were just chatting, he's one of those individuals, well, for lack of a better term, has been always getting after it and relied on his own ability to sell and grow a business. And I just love that. You know, this game of entrepreneurship isn't always about being the richest or the most known. A lot of times for a lot of you out there, and I know this is how it started for me, is you just don't want a freaking boss anymore, right? You want to actually control your own destiny. And so when I meet someone like George, who's been doing that since they're out of college, I want to talk to them. I want to see what they're up to. So enjoy this podcast with Jorge Soto, the CEO of Asset Mule. I hope you enjoy it.
So we're at the business show and you come up to me, but the reason we want to talk is like, all right, we're in the game. Tell
Absolutely.
everybody a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, Jorge Soto or Jorge. If you're in Miami, it's Jorge.
Okay.
We talked about how I was named after George Harrison.
Right. Which one do you like, if you were to introduce somebody?
I usually go by George.
Okay.
Yeah, so Jorge Soto, co-founder at Asset Mule, serial entrepreneur, been doing specifically B2B SaaS software for the last decade or so.
Okay.
But I've been doing startups since I was a junior in undergrad, which
Really?
now is 23 years, which is crazy.
So you were telling me before we started hitting the record button, you met a venture capitalist.
Yes.
How old were you when you met that VC?
I was 20. So I was 20 years old. I was at Florida State. I had just joined a business association on campus, even though I was a psychology major. So I wanted to go and help adolescent, at-risk youth get out of their problems. So I studied psychology. It was gonna that was gonna be my mission. But then I got the bug of wanting to be rich and all this stuff, right? That kind of stuff. And then so I joined this International Business Association, met this VC. He introduced the idea of entrepreneurship and that whole ecosystem of building businesses from ideas to something great. And so I got hooked on that. My first startup was a junior at Florida State working on commercializing some Wi-Fi networks on college campuses.
Okay.
So that's how I got involved with tech and have been doing it ever since.
So did that VC spread that message to everybody, or did he clue in on you and was like, you got something here?
Yeah. So here's the quick story. Shout out to Peter Atwell, by the way, if he's watching this.
Shout out, Peter. Yeah.
So Peter's an awesome VC in the Central Florida area, actually. So Peter was on campus looking at Florida State because his son wanted to go to Florida State, right? And so he happened to pass by my booth and where I was recruiting folks on, at the student union to come to my, to join my student organization. So he comes up, he's like, what is this? My son's gonna start school. I think he's gonna be a business major. And I gave him the spiel and he kind of just looked at me and laughed. And his wife walked up and she was giggling and she said, you should get his card. And I said, okay. And so he gave me his card, and I remember looking at it, and the firm was called Milcom Technologies, and it stood for Military Commercial Technologies. And so basically what they would do was acquire technologies or license technologies from military contractors and then commercialize them, right? And so one of the first ventures that he was working with on the side was trying to get this specific technology, which was basically long-range Wi-Fi without needing cellular towers and stuff. It's called WiMAX at 802.14 if anyone wants to nerd out on it. But I started working on a project with him and his son. That thing didn't quite work out. The host technology did sell to Motorola for about $300 million. And I remember going, holy smokes.
So You said it didn't quite work out, but they still sold the host technology
Yes.
to Motorola.
It didn't work out for me because I
Oh.
didn't have equity in the host technology.
Fair.
We were working on a side project that was using that technology.
Got it.
And before we were able to get it rolled out on our campus, which we were
Yeah.
about to, it got sold.
Wow.
Yeah.
But so at this point, though, you've got the bug.
I just saw this guy make 300 million, or
Yeah.
whatever his portion was
Right.
of the deal.
Enough.
And I was like, holy shit, this is crazy,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, there were other reasons why I got the bug, but that certainly brought it like some real validity. Like, oh, wow, I was, so close to a lot of money being made.
Right. So we're about the same age. We're in the early 40s. I think I left corporate 2007, 2008. The company I was working for dissolved, and I said, I'm going to just try it on my own. So how long? So you did the VC thing. That was early in college. Did you go straight into entrepreneurship? Did you go work? What'd you do?
Yeah. So I went straight into entrepreneurship, but I didn't have any money.
Yeah.
And I was by myself. And although my parents are awesome, they weren't like, they didn't hand over any cash to me. And I say that because I think there are some fortunate folks out there who are able to like acquire assets from their parents, and it gives them some runway. So I needed to take a job. And so I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and got a job at a medical software startup. This was about 2004, but I was in parallel on the side, continuing to build a startup that was still in line with the Wi-Fi stuff. Since I had worked on the Wi-Fi infrastructure stuff, I had learned so much about it. So I had this idea of setting up Wi-Fi networks in Atlanta, Georgia, and then renting them out to business owners. And
how old were you at this time?
I was 21 years old.
So you're 21 and you have this idea and you're just going to go.
Just went for it.
Did you ever think, like, what barriers come to your mind when you're doing that?
I didn't think about barriers. I literally believed that I could do anything that I put my mind to. And because I had learned, and Peter and that whole ecosystem, I was working with like these very smart folks who were giving me information about how to build these companies and et cetera. So I felt like, oh, I could apply it to my own, right? And so the business owners that I went after early on were apartment management or property owners. So the idea was, and this was before Wi-Fi as we have it today.
Right.
So my whole idea was I could set up this Wi-Fi network, tap into fiber, right, through these T1s, which at the time were not too expensive to rent, set up basically what would look like a VPN, right, on an apartment property, and then do a rev share with the property owner. Said, I'll put in the infrastructure, I will set up the networks and the VPN and everything. You just add in your association fee, an extra, I forgot what it was, $100, just embedded in there. Folks won't even know, and now they get free Wi-Fi, right? And I'll do a rev share. I'll give you, I forgot what this was a long time ago. I think maybe I said 50-50 or something like that. And that was the idea. And I got some traction. To your point on challenges, I then had to figure out how to do it because I wasn't technical. So during my lunchtime, while working at the medical software company, I would run over to Georgia Tech University and put flyers up looking for engineers.
That's genius.
And
for those that don't know, Georgia Tech, very much tech. There's like a good source of people for that.
Absolutely. I mean, Atlanta's Atlanta for a reason. Great education. There's a lot of really cool reasons why. But that's what I did to try to recruit an engineer.
That's fantastic. So you get the bug, and you find some success early on. You're 21. Where you are now, right? We were just talking about this. You've got something new that you're working with. You just like literally launched beta yesterday. Help me understand, like 20 years later, now you're here. What do you know, and what does it look like for George, who's launching something new, but with 20 years of SaaS experience?
Yeah. I love that you asked this question because I would have never thought that I would answer you in the way that I am today. And it is that I am less I would say less, I don't want to say confident because that's not the right word. It may be arrogant.
Yeah.
When I was 21, 22, I was like, I know everything. I can walk up to anybody, and I did,
Yeah.
and get any deal done anywhere, right? I was also a door-to-door salesman in college. That's how I used to pay for college without
There you go.
flipping burgers.
That's what I like to hear.
So summer times I would do that, and after doing that for a little bit, a couple of years, like it was easy, you know, the approaching people stuff, and it did build a lot of confidence in me. So I would say, at 42, having been doing this for 20 plus years, I think that I have a lot more humility in how difficult this thing is than ever before. So that's one thing I'd say. I would say that don't cut corners either. Like, it's easy to be able to cut corners in certain ways because maybe you've done it before, or you don't want to do the cold calls, you know, because you've done them for a long time, and maybe you're burned out or you feel burned out. But you have to do it, in my opinion. And so, like, lowering the ego, getting rid of the ego is, I think, for me, so important.
Yeah.
And sometimes that ego dissolving is a painful process, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that is also a very big distinction. And I'd say also the balance, right? Like, me now, I understand that my identity cannot be completely 100% built on who I am as a business person, or else my emotional state is a freaking roller coaster.
Yeah, because you're at the demands of the market, and that's
Yeah.
a roller coaster naturally.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And so one of the analogies that I always use is like, if I don't know if you have brothers and sisters.
There you
or
go,
like-
brother and sister. Yeah.
Yeah, or I never had brothers and sisters, but I had a really close cousins and friends. And if they were giving me a hard time, my emotional state would be impacted, right? This would happen also in business environments and stuff like that, just with other people. And so it became very clear to me that if I couldn't keep my internal state in check, right, and my ego and my attachment to the business in check, which is this external thing, then it was going to be very difficult. So that idea, I think, is really important.
When do you think you made that transition?
I know exactly when. It was Q1 of 2018.
Okay, so you would have been 36, something like that?
I was like 38 or something like that, right? Or maybe, something like whatever.
There's a reason I'm in sales. I'm terrible at math.
Yeah,
Everything else.
Me too, right? I remember the exact
So what
moment.
was it? Yeah.
I had a business called First Cut. It was like Uber for video production for B2B marketers.
Yeah.
So I won't dive into the details, but we were at the tail end of it not working out after a couple years, and we had put our heart and soul into it. I had spent 16, 17 years building relationships with venture capitalists and investors and all that, pitching some of them sometimes over the years, and et cetera. And I had felt like, gosh, I had put in so much work, built so many relationships in Silicon Valley, all these things. And so I felt like it was going to come back to me finally, right, at this point. And after a period of time of pitching these investors, I got a 0% conversion rate. And I remember sitting there going, man, I put my personal capital into this thing. I put my heart and soul into this thing, thinking that these fruits of my labor were going to come to fruition, and they didn't. And it hit me really hard. And I was sitting on the lawn of Berkeley High School. If you're familiar with Berkeley, Berkeley, California area, we had an office around the corner. So I called my co-founder. I sat down in the grass with him, and he was a really good guy. Shout out to Tommy, really great guy. And I sat down with him, and I started crying, man. I just started bawling like a baby, like I hadn't cried since I was a toddler or something. And I was just like, man, I feel completely lost. Because for the first time, I felt this doubt that I had never experienced as a business person, right? And it was at that moment that it became very clear to me that if I wasn't able to separate who I was and how I felt about myself, my self-esteem, my identity from the business, that I was going to have a hard time from a mental health perspective, right? And so that was the first time, and it took a little while for that identity to die. Actually, it took years. It really was tough, and for my close friends and family and stuff who know, the transformation that I was going through during those times, over the last couple of years. Then the COVID thing happened. That didn't help either, right? For anybody, right? But I was in the middle of all that stuff, so I'm sitting there stuck, like dealing with all this stuff that was coming up, trying to figure out who the heck am I really, outside of being a great sales guy, outside of being a great entrepreneur. I say great because that's how I had perceived myself. So at that moment, it was like I wasn't a good entrepreneur. I wasn't a good salesperson.
Which is not true. Like, you can do a lot of things right and still fail.
Yeah. So that's the story behind that.
So here's what I want to leave everyone with, because this show is about overall wealth, right? And I think you've articulated that really well. But we could have all kinds of age groups of entrepreneurs. You and I are lucky ones that you're at 20 years, I'm about 16. So we've been doing it a long time, and we've still got a lot of runway, right? Which is really cool. But what would you tell the young entrepreneur watching this?
Yeah, I would tell the young entrepreneur. So what I would tell the young entrepreneur is that, number one, it is going to always be a little more difficult than you think, but that's okay. Mm-hmm. Like, life is hard at times, but life is also easy at times, right? Like, I think that being able to try to stay even keel, balanced as much as possible to deal with the ups and downs, I think is really key. Like, I don't have the secret bullet, right? They call the magic bullet, right? The secret sauce, I should say.
There is none.
I don't know what that is. I thought I knew it back, by the way, when I was 22. We all did. Right?
Yeah, of course we did.
And so I have a lot more appreciation and respect. But I do believe, for those young entrepreneurs out there, if you could keep your internal state good, how do you do that? Eating well as much as you can. Cut the booze out as much as you can. Listen, I'm not one to judge. I can promise you that, and it's not that at all. Yeah. What I'm saying more is, how do you actually try to keep anxiety and these things better?
No, I don't disagree with that, because I've met a lot of people that are cresting around the late 30s, early 40s, where it's just naturally is happening. So I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, well, it's really more for that resilience and stress management, right?
Yeah.
So, like, eating well, if you have a workout routine or a meditation, and not just physical stuff, right, but internal stuff. That's why I think meditation or mindfulness, there's a lot of books and stuff you can pick up, like Power of Now. There's a lot of these things. Even if you read there's a great book by Napoleon Hill, which is Think and Grow Rich. Yeah.
It's a must read for everybody.
Best read, right? Yeah. Like, even if you look at it, for the folks out there, reread it, there is spiritual stuff in there.
Absolutely.
Energy, esoteric, what they would call woo-woo stuff.
And it's worth a read every year, honestly.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I would say that, like, I wouldn't be able to give any tactical stuff, because I think that you have to go through the learning process on your own and figure it out. But I would say, work on that, and then don't let fear hold you back. The old saying, the only thing to fear is fear itself. Was that Theodore Roosevelt, I think it is?
That would have been Kennedy.
Or was it Kennedy?
Yeah,
okay.
I think. We'll edit it out if it's we're both wrong.
Either way, that is the absolute truth for me. Yeah. Don't let fear is an illusion, but I think that you have to understand that the amount of fear, or the amount of impact that fear has on you, is also influenced by your state of being, again, your health and these sort of things. So that's what I would say.
Awesome. Dude, thank you so much. Tell everybody how to find you.
Yes, so check me out on LinkedIn. Yep. So you can find me by searching for Startup George, I think is my handle.
I love it.
Yeah, so Startup George.
What's the new venture?
It's called AssetMule.ai. Okay. So if you're a sales and marketing leader out there, want to create personalized interactive sales collateral for sales assets, check it out.
We'll put a link below. But
perfect, and it's free to sign up. You can check it out.
Jorge, whichever one you want to be called, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.